Previously on Podcast Without Pretense.
I can't wait to talk about this movie with you guys because it means so much to me. So I'm really glad that you're both taking the time to watch it.
Time management skills are my best attribute, I think.
That was the shortest talk about wrestling we've had.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Strickland.
I'm bad with time.
And I'm Eric Sandine.
And together, we form the most dangerous stable WWE has never seen.
What would we be?
Not the New Day. We'd be Roadkill is what we'd be. Not the giant Amish wrestler from ECW. We would literally be Roadkill.
It's like, so you'd be like Flattened Raccoon. I'd be Cow Pie. And Sandine would be
Dead Armadillo. You got to think about
that was pretty quick for coming up with Roadkill, like, to be honest.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking where you are, and then what kind of animals would commonly be roadkill. So,
I guess I'd be a pigeon pizza, now that I think about it.
I don't think I've ever seen an armadillo. Maybe a roadrunner.
Really? Well, I guess maybe armadillos are more of a Texas thing.
Yeah.
We get them in Georgia, too, South Georgia, and then into Florida. But this show is not necessarily about roadkill. It's not necessarily about anything, in fact. I don't even know why that's a segue.
I don't know either. But so our previous episode was so amazing, as you saw clips there where we consistently wear the same clothes. I do want to talk a little bit about the last time we were supposed to shoot was last week, and I was like, hey, I can't do the show. And I explained why. Usually I have some bullshit excuse like, hey, I have a hangnail, or, today I just kind of feel like dancing. But last week, I was at day 3 of no heat and hot water at this apartment while I had my son over, and I couldn't take it anymore. So around 6 o'clock, they're going to have this thing fixed or not. We decided to go to a hotel because my boy wanted a bath because he can't stay that grimy. We needed somewhere that had decent heat because even though it's April here in New York, it still got pretty chilly here. And so I didn't know where I was going to be, and setting this up in a hotel would not exactly be the best thing. So that's where I was last week. No heat and hot water, and that wasn't fixed until the temporary fix wasn't in until Thursday, and the permanent fix wasn't in until Friday. We still have no gas to cook with. Not that I cook very often, but I can't do it if I wanted to. So, hey, and it's not my fault. Totally landlord stuff, and they had to repipe the basement so the utility company and city could inspect it. That was my week.
Picked a real winner of a building to move into, Ayaz.
Not only that, but yeah, and it's like, so for like 4 days I was here by myself. Liz was in California visiting family. My son wasn't here. I had the dogs. It was just me and the dogs. Everything works great. Then now that there's 2 other human beings here, everything goes to shit with the building. But on the bright side, what are the chances they're going to need to do that again, right? My lease is up in July. I'll be looking for a new place pretty fucking soon.
All right. Well, Eric, how was your week last week since, you also got a chance to take some time off like Ayaz? It sounds like his was pretty relaxing.
Oh, it was.
What the hell did I do last week? I don't know. I don't think I did anything particularly special. I worked a lot, actually. We have a new product that's really cool that'll probably come out soon, and everybody will be excited about it. But until then, I just worked a lot.
I hear it's a pump that feels like a sneaker.
Yeah, it's exactly. But it works like through your speakers, so you don't even have to put it on or do anything with it. It's just
That's amazing.
I'm blown away by whatever the hell you just said. Cool. I mean, I ended up having a pretty slow week last week, which was nice because the week before had been really hectic. So that was pretty cool. This week is hectic again, so I guess there is no such thing as a normal week for me anymore. I just gotta get used to that. But one of the things we do for this show is that we don't prepare anything. That's rule number 1. But we do occasionally watch movies, and our shtick is that we want to see how far. What?
I love how we don't prepare anything, yet we all have notes.
I don't have notes on this one, but that's okay because I lived it.
Yeah.
So our shtick is that we will watch a movie and we try to eliminate all potential distractions so that we can just pay full attention to the movie for as long as we possibly can. The deal being that we're mostly used to having a second screen whenever we're watching something at home and we're never really fully paying attention. So we tend to pick really bad movies so that it makes it challenging and almost like a sense of like a masochistic torture session to try and watch as much of the film as possible. And my fellow co-hosts may feel that this movie, in fact, that we watched for this week falls into that category. But I personally, unabashedly, love the movie that we picked, that I kind of forced Eric into picking for this week, which is Blood Salvage, also known as Mad Jake in the UK, which never saw any home theater release apart from rental copies. And someone has taken one of those rental copies because it's clearly a VHS transfer and uploaded it to YouTube. I saw that 2 weeks ago, and that ended up being the movie we watched. So before we get into what the film is about, how far did you guys get before distractions came into play?
I managed a massive 8 minutes and 20 seconds. Basically,
Yikes.
because my shitty, poor time management. If I had done this properly, since it's been 2 weeks, you think I would have seen it by now. 8 minutes, 20 seconds. Eric?
Mine was 28 minutes because I was using my Chromecast and the cat unplugged the router, and I had to determine what was wrong with the Chromecast, which led to laptops.
Gotcha. So, blame it on the cat.
In
my
to be
case,
perfectly honest, I think I could have made it pretty far through this after watching it. Like
I mean, I find it genuinely entertaining, but again, I could be just totally biased because I was an extra in this film. So mine doesn't really count. I originally watched this movie all the way through with no distractions in the movie theater at the premiere of the movie. So in Atlanta, the premiere in Atlanta. And I've seen it several times since then. I have my own VHS copy somewhere. And so this time when I was watching it online, I did watch it in 2 sessions, and my wife was in the room with me, but she had seen the movie before as well. And it's one of the few horror movies that she will, endure. And I think it's partly because it's a horror movie that has a really weird sense of humor. It's almost a horror comedy in many cases. It does stray into incredibly dark territory, particularly in the last 20 minutes of the movie. So it's not a straight up horror comedy. And it also has a very, very strong identity of where it's set. It's set in Georgia, rural Georgia. And they really commit to that setting. And I think it works in the movie. So does anyone want to explain the plot? I mean, Ayaz can't. He didn't watch the end. Eric, do you want to explain what the plot of this film is?
I could do a relatively quick summary. I mean, the plot is we have a family, little boy, dad, mom, girl who can't walk.
Right.
They
She had gotten sick at some point in the past and became paralyzed as a result from the waist down.
Right. They are at some contest. I didn't really determine what the contest was. Was it a Miss Something contest?
It was a beauty pageant for a state fair. It was the Miss Peach Festival beauty pageant contest.
They travel from there. They're going back home, I believe, which is Atlanta. Somebody screws with their tire on the car, one of the pseudo mechanics, I suppose. They get stuck. Jake, Mad Jake, as it were, helps them out, tows their trailer. It turns out Mad Jake is harvesting and selling body parts, and I mean that's mostly the plot.
I can fill out a few things here because it's the stuff that I really appreciate about this movie. I won't call it subtle. It's not subtle at all, but I will say that it fleshes out the motivations of the characters and what's going on, and also again points to the humor of the film. So the reason it's called Blood Salvage is Jake and his two sons, Hiram, who's super skinny, super racist, super misogynist, and homophobic, and awful in every way, and is
he was the only name I couldn't get. I could
Hiram?
not figure out his name the entire movie. Yeah.
Well, Hiram is beyond a stereotype of a redneck. He's a caricature of a redneck. Like, take the most rednecky redneck you can think of, like the most backwards thinking person you could think of, and then dial that up a few more notches, and you get to Hiram. And he chews the scenery in every single scene. Every line he delivers is over the top melodramatic. Mm-hmm. Then you have Roy, who is mentally handicapped. He's slow, and everyone calls him a half-wit. These are the two sons of Jake. And in the movie, you discover, like at the very beginning, Jake talks about how some people seem to have everything go well for them, and then they don't care about anyone else. And other people who really care don't do well at all, and it doesn't seem fair. So he has this weird kind of complex where he wants to even the scales a bit. And he really believes that what he's doing is the Lord's work, which makes him even scarier in my mind. Part of this is that I grew up in the South. I went to, when I was a kid, Southern Baptist churches, and Jake preaches while he harvests organs. And it just made it like, it took something that terrified me legitimately when I was a child and married it to a horror movie in such a way that I was like, this is amazing. But then I have an appreciation for it because of my background, right? So it's not like everyone's going to have that same experience. Anyway, so Jake runs a salvage yard, and one of the signs, you can barely see it in the movie, but it says Jake's Body and Paint, but the T has fallen off, so it's Body and Pain. Yeah, little touches like that.
I'm sad that I missed that. That's brilliant.
I think that actually ends up getting cut off in the transfer because of the 4:3 aspect ratio.
Right.
I don't think you can even see it because of that. But anyway, it's this. He has this old house and this huge barn, and you find out what he's been doing is running people off the road and then towing their vehicles back to a salvage yard, and then not just salvaging the vehicles, but salvaging the body parts of the people that his sons have run off the road. And there's a crooked doctor played by, is it Ray Walston?
Yeah.
Who buys the organs from him. And he keeps the people alive as long as possible, because sometimes the doctors don't need all the organs. They need some of them, but not all of them. So instead of wasting them, he keeps them alive with machinery that he has in the salvage yard. So he has like artificial hearts made out of dishwashers and things like that. And you find out also his own wife, the whole reason he got into this crazy lifestyle is that his own wife had need of a heart transplant, but she was so far down on the list, she never got the heart. But he says people who were able to pay to essentially bribe their way to the top of the list got ahead of her, which is why she ended up dying. And that kind of pushed him over the edge and sent him down this pathway where now he's harvesting organs. April, who's the young lady in the family that Eric was talking about, resembles his dead wife to some extent. And because she is paralyzed, Jake is convinced that he will be able to cure her paralysis. And against all odds, he actually does. He ends up using a very long syringe to siphon spinal fluid out of her younger brother and then injects it into her. She doesn't know where any of this is coming from, and she's not in favor of it. And ultimately, she is able to regain her ability to walk, and she manages to escape. And there's, of course, the standard horror movie, oh, good, the bad guy's dead. Oh, no, wait, the bad guy's not really dead. Except for the thing that it does that for Hiram, it does it for Roy, it does it for Jake, and it does it for Hiram's car. Like, all of those have moments where you're convinced this thing is gone, it's dead, it's done, and then it comes back. And that's part of why I love it. So I'm skipping over a lot of stuff, but essentially it's a horror movie where the main protagonist is the young lady who is being held captive, and she's paralyzed from the waist down, so she's doubly helpless. But what I love about this movie is, even though you would think that she would just be ultimately completely helpless, she does a lot to try and escape, and she keeps fighting the whole time. Like, she's never the helpless heroine who bad things happen to and she can't do anything about it. She tries and fights throughout the entire film until she gets away at the very end. And she has, I think, the best line in the movie, and that's saying something because the movie has several lines that I absolutely love, which is the exchange that she has with Roy. When Roy comes in to when she's called him in. They've already had one scene in a room together. She's called him into a room. Roy remembers the half-wit character. And she's trying to get Roy to give her the key so she can get out of the room. And Roy, even though he's a half-wit, he's scared of his dad, so he's saying no. And Roy is a full-grown man. I mean, a huge guy. And so then she stands up and reaches back and grabs a statue of Jesus. And as she's doing it, Roy looks at her and he says, "Miss April, you can walk." And she just says, "It's a miracle, Roy," and then hits him upside the head. And I'm like, holy shit, that's an amazing line. And, you know, there are other great touches when Jake is doing his surgery. He's preaching into a microphone. And when he gets to a point where he wants his congregation to say amen, no one's responding. Like, none of the other patients who are all on various life support and are held up by barbed wire and other stuff, none of them are responding. He picks up a drill and then runs the drill for a second, and they all just very slowly mumble out an amen. And there's things like that make me love this movie.
No, I do have notes of my own, and okay, I do agree with a lot of this stuff. Yeah, so okay, so I had to watch. I started this movie at the subway, which is great, right? So I have my phone out. I'm burning up data. I said, "Fuck it, I'm gonna do that." I get home. It's a little later than I want it to be, so I watched the movie in 2x speed. So these are notes based on watching this movie in 2x speed. So forgive me if I missed some stuff, because Jonathan actually filled it in pretty well here. Okay, so watching in 2x speed because I'm running out of time. Jake is being sought after by Saxon, whose name I don't remember. I think it's Cliff. Saxon goes down. The women talk slow enough that in 2x speed, they're easy to understand. So that's good to know if you wanted to watch this too. They talk really slowly.
Well, that's Cliff, how we talk in the South.
Cliff, where are you? I guess that's Saxon. Mom tries to run. Gators are in the back. So the mom gets lured into Jake's house after Saxon, the father, goes in, and he's already been captured. They constantly are smothered, by the way. So when somebody is going to be held back, there's like this blue rag that comes out of Jake's pocket, and he just puts it right over their mouth, and they are out like within a couple seconds. So like,
oh yeah, the movie was sponsored by Ether.
Yeah, Ether and chloroform, and they had a special thing. Maybe it's slower because it didn't. And I was watching it in 2x, so it seemed pretty fast. They all get knocked out. All right, so the young blonde, whose name is April, grabs a shotgun to save Mom. So that was pretty neat. Mom is smothered by Jake. Jake is a smooth talker. So while he's being threatened by a shotgun, he tries to tell April to put the gun down. He's not that smooth a talker because she fires at him. April then CBs for help, but doesn't know where she is, so she can't get people to show up too quickly. Jake says April caused her mom to have a nervous breakdown in the house, and Cliff is staying by her side. So that's why April has to come in. So he's really trying to get April to show up voluntarily. So Jake, even though he's out of his mind, he is trying very hard. Jake is still trying to get in April. His henchman, I didn't realize it was his son at the time, Hiram, I guess, or Hiram. Hiram? What's his name?
Hiram.
He puts some kind of tubing in the AC, fills the RV where the family was in with some kind of smoke or knockout gas. April then wakes up in a bedroom. It's a well-lit, relatively nice bedroom, not like a dungeon or anything. Jake tells us that Helen needed a new heart. Helen is his wife, but she didn't make it, and that's what Jonathan was talking about, the whole people who had money got through. Let's see. Ray Walston is here. He's my favorite. He examines Mom. April is screaming to get out, but the redneck, this is Hiram again, hits the ceiling with a broomstick to shut her up. He's on the floor below her and says, "Shut up or he'll show up naked." That's a pretty good threat.
Naked.
Yep, that's what that's his threat to make her be quiet, and she does it. By the way, she does comply. Now Jake has a small boy. This is April's brother, and extracts some spinal fluid in the barn. Well, the spinal fluid's from the boy, but the whole thing's in the barn. He's got some people hanging up in the barn. They seem very zombie-like. There's like tubing and stuff there. There's a fat guy. This is Roy. Jake's son brings a children's book to read to April. Now, if you're watching this in 2X, you don't know that Roy is mentally slow because talks normal to me in this thing in 2X. So I did not know that until we were talking about it in this show. So it's good to know that Roy was a little bit slow.
It's really, I mean, you must have missed the bit where he comes out. He's like, Diddy says dinner's ready. Yeah. And then they respond with, have you been cooking dinner all this time? And all he does is look down, and then he looks back up and says, Daddy says dinner's ready. Like, it's clear that he not a lot going on upstairs to people other than Ayaz. Go ahead, Ayaz.
Maybe he was just really, really redneck too, or maybe he was in the moonshine. I don't know what his deal was, but anyway, I guess I didn't pick it up in 2X speed. All right, so let's see. He brings the book to read to April. Son says that Roy says that Jake can fix her. Roy brings April her wheelchair, then leaves April alone as she requests. I get it at this point. I thought he just had a thing for her. Maybe he was trying to save her. Not that he was mentally not all the way there. Jake scolds his son, grabs him by his coveralls to yell at him. April, when she's in a wheelchair, finds some knitting needles for defense. Jake's at his fridge, pulls out a jar, a glass jar that has a tape label that has the word boy on it. So this must be all the fluid that he has extracted from the boy. April looks determined with her knitting needle. Jake says he will help her. He can make her walk. Hiram goes to put ether over the girl's face again, promptly is stabbed in the forearm with a knitting needle. Jake expels Hiram. Go ahead.
Something I forgot to mention, one of the things I love is that Hiram is the victim of multiple acts of violence. Hiram is easily the most reprehensible character in this movie. And that's saying something considering how nasty Jake is. But Hiram is worse. And yet Hiram is also the one who repeatedly has violence acted upon him, and he deserves every moment of it. So at the beginning of the movie, there's a bit where it's really just a celebrity cameo. There's Evander Holyfield at the state fair who
I was wondering
is
how
doing.
No one mentioned that yet. Like, it's the first scene in the movie, and Evander Holyfield is there for no reason.
Yeah, he's there as a promotional thing about, it's like get in the ring and try and go around with a champ. And this was during the time when he was they were trying to set up the Holyfield Tyson fight. So this was before that fight had happened. And so Hiram gets in the ring thinking that he can handle this because they've blindfolded Holyfield. And Holyfield, of course, immediately knocks him down with one punch. And so that's the beginning of the abuse of Hiram. And the knitting needle in the forearm is another great example. But the rest of the movie, like, there are tons of moments where Hiram gets the shit kicked out of him, which is awesome. And he's like a stick of a man. He looks like if there was a stiff breeze, he would break in half. Anyway, that's it. Go ahead, Ayaz. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Yeah. No, not a problem. And back to the Holyfield point, when I saw his name show up really early in the credits, I was like, what kind of role does he have? And it is a cameo in the beginning. He is in the state fair. And I'm like, oh, that really is Evander Holyfield. Doesn't show up at any other point in the movie, by the way. Just for your edification. If you're wondering, is he going to show up and save the day? Evander Holyfield is nowhere to be found. So, you fucker, you should have shown up to save somebody. Anyway.
That would have been weird, but also hilarious.
So, Jake expels his son from the room. Oh, yeah, by the way, as Hiram is complaining to his father about the damn knitting needle, Jake just pulls the knitting needle out and is like, get the hell out of here, which I thought was pretty hilarious.
And he just says, put a Band-Aid on it. And I'm like, yes, this is so great.
He just sends him out of the way, extracts some fluid out of the jar and takes on the girl. We cut away. We go to the barn. Saxon is strapped to the table in a barn, but he's able to break his restraints by pure Saxonicity. Because there's really, I guess, he's there and he struggles for all of like 4 seconds, and then boom, one of the things comes up and he just unbuckles his other arm. Saxon is stopped by a man asking for help because he's trying to get out of the barn. Many people in the barn with tubes everywhere. Saxon jumps out of the barn window and is off to the woods at night. It's now morning and the cops show up. Jake talks to the sheriff. Cut to April with bruising on her back and her bra undone. She's laying on her stomach. Sheriff talks to Jake about his transpirings. What exactly went down? Oh, Jake's like, oh, were you talking to this handsome-looking guy? So the sheriff opens up the trunk, and there's Saxon, bound and gagged, and because that's what they do. They work together. April crawls to the door. She sees an old iron, and she proceeds to use the iron to remove the pins in the hinges of the door because the door is locked. And I thought this was super fucking creative.
It's amazing, right?
Yeah.
Your victim, instead of just sitting there, is actually actively rescuing herself. And this movie was in 1990.
And it takes place in Atlanta. And so this girl is absolutely awesome. So she's really, really trying. So now we go back to Jake's barn. He's performing surgery on Saxon. Looks like a liver removal or something because it's a very large organ he takes out of him. Hiram tries to stop April, ties her up with some electrical cord by the hands, claims he's going to take needle nose pliers to her later. What a gentleman. A gator shows up. We go back outside. A gator. There's no character named Gator. It's a fucking alligator. Shows up again. Scares Ray Walston. Jake gives him some food. Does he give him a tomato or is it an organ?
No,
I can't tell.
It's some flesh.
Yeah. Okay.
So he does give. By the way, there was a great promotional photo of the crew and cast all standing on top of one of the trailers with the gator just standing beneath, looking up at them. It's a fantastic photo that was just from the behind the scenes that I got to see. It was very funny. That gator, by the way, was very sweet.
You got to meet the gator?
Of
or did
course.
you eat it?
No, I didn't eat the gator.
Well, it's sweet. I don't.
He was a pussycat.
I suck at my. I don't. I'm pretty culturally insensitive and ignorant, and I don't know shit about the South. Anyway, where were we?
Well, this was a good primer.
Yeah, it's a good thing. So now I think that the slow guy is just Southern, and I think you're eating gators.
Oh, he's not, honey. He's not retarded. Well, he's just from the South.
You can eat alligator, so that's not that far off.
Well, some people eat alligator, actually. But anyway, so Jake is very concerned.
I've had alligator, just not that alligator.
Okay, so he was sweet in the temperamental sense. Anyway, yes. Jake is very concerned that Hiram has tied April up. Jake says, you can walk, April, because he unties or binds her cable there. Says April will stay in Jake's room so she doesn't go anywhere, and he knocks her out again. Pulls out the blue rag, and down she goes. And and the last line I have here is, my Torino. You're all going to die.
Oh, yes, the Torino.
So April, I jumped a hell of a lot to get to the line.
That's the car that comes back from the dead. Yeah. So you didn't get to see this part, IS, because you didn't get that far. So let me tell you how this where were you at when you had to stop?
So Jake was in the barn, and April had just set him on fire. Now, while we were talking on this show, I did watch the rest of it in 2x, but I would like to know what exactly I saw because I did watch it like twice. So go for it.
All right. So when the bit that I mentioned where where Roy comes in, she's lured Roy in. This is during the same time when her father is being operated on. She lures Roy in and she hits him over the head with the statue, apparently killing him. Then she hears Jake coming into the house, and Jake is looking for Roy. So she covers Roy up with some clothing that's in the room, and then she lays back down, face down on the bed, so it looks like she hasn't moved since she was put in there. Jake opens the door, just kind of looks around a little bit, and then sneaks back out, assuming that she's still unconscious. He doesn't notice that there's this enormous pile of clothing where Roy is being covered. And so he goes back outside to try and find Roy. She tries to make an escape, and she is chased by the gator. She uses the car crusher that they have in the salvage yard to kill Gator. So Gator is killed. And then she runs into Hiram and Jake, who then bring her back to the house. Jake actually delivers another one of the best lines in the movie where he says, I can't believe this. I made you walk again, and the first thing you do is run out on me. Fantastic line. Carries her up the stairs, And then he sees what's happened to his son, Roy, and he just totally loses his shit. He starts crying and praying all at the same time. Hiram says, "Can you save him, Daddy?" And he looks down and says, "No, I think he's been dead too long." So he then has changed his mind about April. He had wanted to save her, but now he says that there's too much of the devil in her. So he's going to end up torturing her before killing her. So they take her down to the barn where he's going to operate on her without knocking her out at all. And he lights up an oil lamp and holds a scalpel in it to heat it up. And just as he's about to cut into her, he says, "Now this is going to hurt." And he's like his most menacing. Then just as he's about to cut into her, he thinks, "Oh no, I'm going to use something else." And he turns back to his tools, and April's able to grab the little lantern, the little kerosene lantern, and throw it at Jake. It breaks, it covers them, and he goes up in flames. He runs out of the room. Hiram runs after him. Of course, Hiram's scared about his daddy burning to death. And she manages to get herself free. And before she gets out, Hiram comes back in, but her dad, with the last ounce of his strength, grabs onto Hiram and holds him back. So April and her mom, who has been blinded, her eyes have been removed by Jake, are making their way out. Now, the son is already dead. He's been decapitated. The father is holding back Hiram, so the only two left are April and her mom. They make it back to the RV, which has been repaired, and they start driving out. Hiram gets free of the dad, who then dies of his wounds, and gets in his Torino, his amazing, amazing car, which has the most racist battering ram. It's the Confederate flag as a battering ram, but instead of stars, there are spikes that are set on the front of his Torino. And of course, it plays the da 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 when he's chasing after them. So April's trying to drive as fast as she can. Her mom is laying in the back. Her mom's arm goes limp, which we assume means that she's either unconscious or dead. And you see underneath is Jake, who's been burned very badly. Hiram, by the way, first it gets run off the road while trying to ram the RV. His Torino flips end over end. It goes over a ramp, but instead of Dukes of Hazzard style where it lands safely, it tumbles and tumbles and tumbles, lands on its side, slowly lands on all four wheels, and then starts up again. That's where the Torino comes back from the dead. Because you see this car and you see this massive amount of damage it has taken, and yet it's still able to move, and Hiram is coming after her with a vengeance. She gets behind a logging truck and swerves out of the way just in time as Hiram is about to ram her. And so instead, Hiram ends up ramming the back of the logging truck. So a log goes straight through, crushing his skull, apparently, making the car explode. And so it looks like she's going to be okay. Except that's when Jake gets out from underneath the bed that her mom is laying on in the back of the RV and comes after her. She slams on the brakes. Jake flies out the windshield, and then she runs him over and drives off. At the very end, Jake's tow truck pulls up. Roy leans down. He's got a bandage over his head, and he says, "Don't worry, Daddy. I'm a special person, and I can do anything. I'm going to fix you up." Picks up the charred corpse of his dad, puts it in the truck, gets in, drives off. He's towing the Torino behind him. So the implication is that Roy is going to fix possibly both Jake and Hiram, so that they will be some form of living in the future. And then the credits go up, and it's actually the actor playing Jake singing the hymn, "Are You Washed in the Blood of the Lamb?" Which is amazing.
Watching the credits, I'm sitting there going, "This is an odd choice for
it's a
version of
hymn.
This song."
Yeah, it's a hymn that Jake is singing, and then Roy is singing with him at the beginning, and then he says, "Take it, Hiram," and Hiram sings, and then at the end he says, "And all God's children sing," and you hear the chorus of the people in the barn all singing along too, and it's super creepy. I love this movie so much. Little behind the scenes thing. So the Torino, they had two of them for the filming because they knew they were going to run the Torino all over this ramp, and then it was going to tumble, and then they were pretty sure it was not going to run again. So the stunt driver runs the Torino, hits the ramp, car does this horrible tumble, then ends up landing, and they go get the sledgehammers so they can bang up the second Torino so that it can take the place of the first one. And the stunt driver says, wait. I want to try something. Stunt driver goes back into the Torino that actually did the stunt and turns the ignition, and the motor engages, and it's ready to go, and it's still drivable. And they're like, all right, shit, we'll use that one. Rams into the back of the log. They do the explosion. Remember, all these effects are practical. This is 1990. There's no CGI. Yeah. The stunt is over, and the stuntman says, hey, do you mind if I try something? And the director says, okay. And so he goes and gets into the Torino that now has been blown up, turns the ignition, and the motor turns, and the Torino is still drivable. So there are technically two of these sons of bitch cars out there that still run, or at least at the time of the movie still ran. And one of them was in perfect condition.
And they were smashing that one with the sledgehammer?
They were going to smash the second one to make it look like the first one, but they never had to. Yeah. The second one was in perfect condition. Yeah. So there's great behind the scenes stuff.
You need to add that to the IMDb page, because the only line of trivia here says last film to be released by Paragon Arts International. That's it.
Well, and another wonderful little bit was that when I was there, I was in this carnival scene. So they set up, like in the movie, there's the carnival. It takes place in some part of rural Georgia, and then they drive, and then their RV has been sabotaged, and that's when Jake shows up. In reality, the carnival set was built right next door to the house that Jake, was in, and also the barn that served as his operating theater and hospital. So I got to tour the barn during lunch break. They let me go check it out. Really almost completely unsupervised, which was weird. So I got to look through it, and I got to tell you guys that the natural lighting that came in through the barn lit up a lot of that scene a lot better than what you saw in the film. Like, you could see the details in the various because they had a lot of the bodies were hanging up. Now, there weren't any actors in them, but the bodies were the parts that were, the actors just, it was almost like a costume. The actors would slide in, so their head would be on top of the torso, because you had all these weird tubes and stuff coming out and pumps and things. And seeing how it was all done, like the detail in that barn, it was so creepy. And I was so looking forward to seeing how it came across on film. And because it's so dark, you can't make out any of those details. And that really made me sad, because they were phenomenal. They had go ahead, Eric.
I was going to say, speaking about the barn and the random actors in there, one of my favorite pseudo comedy parts of the film was the Elvis that was in there.
Yeah, Elvis is in there. So you can't see it in the movie so much, but in that bit, so Elvis is seated in he's in a sitting position, and he had like a giant like pipe, or kind of like the exhaust hoses that you would connect to a dryer. One of those was kind of sticking out of his abdomen, and behind him, above his head, almost like a halo, is a gold record that's in a frame that's hanging right behind his head. Yeah, you can't see it so much in the movie, but I saw it walking through the barn, and I'm like, holy shit, that's amazing.
Well, they make it so obvious he's Elvis too, because it's like during the amen scene, everybody else says amen, and then he chimes up like a second later with like the amen, or
like amen. Yeah. No, and also they had great names for the various characters, like the woman in the bouffant that you see toward the end. They called the Far Side Lady because she had the cat's eye glasses. And so they referred to her as Farside Lady on set. They also had Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2. One of the guys was held up. He looked almost like a scarecrow. He was standing vertically, held up like his arms had barbed wire wrapped around them, so he's suspended. That one was, I think, entirely just a dummy. They didn't have an actual actor in that, so he was designed to be in the background of shots and stuff. The second one was also a dummy that was suspended from the ceiling, so he's like in a laying position, like face down, but suspended by tubes coming out of his body that are then wrapped up in the rafters of the barn. So both of those were super creepy, and you really didn't get a good look at either of them. The guy in the tank was also very. I mean, that body part was really creepy. Also, there's a bit where Hiram has got a sledgehammer and he's trying to come after April. This is at the end of the movie after Jake has been set on fire. He's swinging the sledgehammer wildly, and at one point it connects with this giant tank. So there's this guy who's in the tank, and only his head is exposed. Like his head is at the top of the tank, and then there's a lid on it. And you presume that the reason he's in the tank is that maybe his skin has been removed. Hiram's hammer connects with the tank. It shatters, and the next scene you see Hiram getting back up because the liquid in the tank has knocked him down, and then he spits out a long stream of whatever was in that tank. And once again, you're like, Hiram gets everything he deserves. He's just such a horrible human being. Like, but anyway.
Yeah, I don't know what my other notes, things that were quick. Oh yeah, when Jake is trying to lure the mom and the daughter into the house, one of my favorite lines is he tells them about how the couch has been reupholstered and they have cable. I was like, That's a good selling point. Like that is like side of the road motel selling point. We've got HBO, so come on in.
Yeah, well, I mean, it makes sense too, right? It's the idea of this country guy trying to figure out what would the city folk find tempting, and so and he's not intelligent, you know, he's cunning, but he's not smart. So his attempts are very transparent. I mean, April sees through him.
And
okay, he is pretty smart. He does get these people. He got April to walk. He's keeping these people alive, right? Like, I mean, I know that Ray Walston's helping, but Jake? And he said a couple of times, like, I'm trained. Now give me some fishing wire so I can sew him back up.
No, that's my favorite part. That's my part about his idiocy when he's like, go to my tackle box and get some fishing wire so I can sew these people up. And I'm like, hold on, why wouldn't he keep that near the operating table? Like,
well, see, that's the thing about Jake. See, Jake is treating surgery like a mechanic would treat a vehicle. That's the whole thing. So Jake, he's not smart. He's following directions and he's able to do it. He's got very good hands. He knows, you know, but he's treating the human body like it's a machine and that the organs are just parts. And he's selling the parts. That's the whole point of it. And when you're done with, by the way, this was another thing that didn't really translate in the movie very well. But the reason that he has a gator is to get rid of any parts that are left over once he's done selling all the bits that he can sell. So instead of keeping someone alive perpetually, as once that person is totally done and there's nothing else to do with them, he ends up feeding what's left to the gator. So I don't think he's intelligent. He's extremely religious and crazy, and that's what made him such an effective villain for me. So, Eric, what did you find this movie entertaining? I mean, I know that I'm biased, so it's hard for me to tell.
I was actually pretty entertained by it. Especially the attempts at comedy really got me every time they broke it up. You know, so just the simple stuff. Like what the other one was after he gets the mom. And he's like chasing her around or whatever, and finally he chloroforms her or whatever. You know, the two boys are standing there, and Jake looks at him and goes, "Well, that's the last time we invite strangers to dinner." And that made me laugh. Like just stuff like that actually made me laugh. But like as a whole, it was a good movie. And you're right. Like April, the girl, is like a great character. You know, she's not just laying there the whole time. She's trying to get away. Like, she grabs the shotgun and, like, you know, time and time again, she's trying to get away and not just like be a victim. And it's that, I mean, that part of it is just great. But yeah, I mean, I actually really enjoyed it.
I had so much fun watching this again. And obviously, you know, my experience of seeing the stuff behind the scenes has really affected my judgment. So that's why I have to ask people, like, is this a good movie? Because I can't. My opinion is too tied up with my experience. So, but I really like the atmosphere of this film. I think there are a few things that I would change about the movie. I would change the lighting a little bit, so again, you could get a little more of the detail out of the barn, because so much work went into those models. I mean,
maybe a
it was
higher
phenomenal.
definition copy would be helpful there.
That would be great. It would be great to actually get a transfer from the film as opposed to from the VHS, right? Mm-hmm. It'd be, but I've only seen that once. I saw it in the movie theater. The one time I saw it in the movie theater. Every other time I've seen this movie, it's been the VHS copy.
Yeah,
that's it.
And the VHS you have is 4:3 too.
Yeah, they never released anything else. There was never, as far as I know, there was never a Laserdisc. There was never any DVD. So as far as I know, in fact, the actual original print of the film may not even exist anywhere. I don't even know if that exists someplace.
So if you're watching this and you have a copy of this, or a copy of this movie somewhere that's sitting in like your storage shed or in your crazy ass barn somewhere, you should send it to us.
Did we make sure to tweet this out? Because we could probably find the director.
We didn't actually tweet
it a couple times.
I would love Salvage. I would love if we could find, like, if this print exists someplace. This is a movie Alamo Drafthouse should totally re-release. I mean, the other thing I would change is the music. I'm not crazy about the music in this movie. It's very late 80s, early 90s kind of horror music.
I didn't notice it after a while though. Like after the first 20 minutes, I didn't really notice it, and that wasn't bad. You know, it was perfectly fine.
I did love all the moments where Jake is singing church hymns to himself, because he makes them, like, they're church hymns that he sings Bringing in the Sheaves, which is not technically a very creepy song, except the way he sings it, it sounds really menacing. And then there's Are You Washed in the Blood of the Lamb, which is already an incredibly creepy song.
Yeah.
If you're not really down with the Christian story of, you know, of Jesus and the sacrifice and all that kind of stuff. So those parts I would definitely want to keep, because I think it really adds again to the atmosphere. It's really just the incidental music that was used to try and create tension or whatever. I would not mind that score changing. But other than that, I think everything in that movie was so much fun.
So this director has only done this movie. That's it.
And then the
studio
folded.
And
the girl who played April did not act again after this, apparently, according to IMDb. Maybe she did, but they haven't updated her page.
Jake was apparently a character actor in everything. Like,
yeah, no, he also was the Kate's Pickles spokesman. There's a brand of Kate's Pickles, and I think it was in South Carolina was where they were made, and he used to do these, and they were charming little Southern commercials talking about, like, why are we so enthusiastic about Kate's Pickles here? Well, there ain't much else to do. And they would snap into one of the pickles or whatever. So they actually had Kate's Pickles jars on the set. But they ended up not featuring them because the company got a little antsy about it. So, but originally I think they were going to put the son, the little boy, originally I think they were going to put the head of that character in a giant Kate's Pickles jar, and I think they eventually decided against that.
No, that's in the movie. It's not a Kate's jar, but it's in a jar.
That's what I'm saying. That I think originally it was going to be a Kate's Pickles jar, and then they decided not to make it a Kate's Pickles jar.
Yeah, this movie had balls to do that, by the way. They took the little boy, which you don't kill children in movies. They did in this movie, and they put his head in a jar at the end, and you kind of just, the camera pans by like, oh yeah, that kid is dead. I know they were taking the fluid out of him. I think they were going to kill him, but they did. They don't actually kill him on screen, right? They just kind of kill him off screen.
No, it's a reveal.
My note about Bobby, the son, was Bobby apparently cannot tell the difference between an alligator and a dog. I fear this may come back to haunt him. Never mind, didn't get grabbed by the alligator. Because Jake just, like, in the next scene, Jake grabs him.
Yeah, and if you guys were curious about the weird little sounds that the baby alligators make, there's a point where April is running away and she tries to hide in a car, and it turns out the car is being used as a nest. The alligators are making this weird chirping noise. That's actually what baby alligators sound like. It really was the real noise that they make.
That scene also made no, like, it didn't make sense to me because she's running away from the fully grown alligator, which, like, I don't know, I'm pegging it 200 plus some odd pounds. And she gets into the car, and there's the babies sitting there, and then immediately runs out of the car back into the fray with the giant alligator.
I would imagine she has been established as a city person, so she probably has very little experience with things like gators and doesn't realize that a bunch of baby alligators pose extremely little threat to her. Although, to be fair, if you are near an alligator's nest, you are in some serious danger, not from the babies, but from mama, because gators are incredibly protective of their nests. I speak from experience, because I've gone on a tour of the Okefenokee and had our boat go between a mama gator and her nest, and she was not happy. But at any rate, yeah, that's a little weird. I do think that particular sequence is odd, and then of course she kills the alligator inside the car crusher, which the way it was shot and edited is also a little clumsy. That's another part of the movie that I would change if there were any way to do it, is that sequence, because I think you could do practical effects that would have been more gory and satisfying. They had to do a lot of cutaways for that. So that part was a little unfortunate. But other than that, I mean, maybe tell Hiram to take it down a notch in his scenery chewing, because it's just so crazy.
It was so necessary. So then when he was stabbed or punched or anything, it was like, yeah, well, fuck that guy.
Yeah, that's true.
If he doesn't act like that, I mean, I didn't feel bad at all when he got stabbed so quick. And when Jake just pulls it out, I'm just like, yeah, that's what should happen to this guy. This guy's a real,
and then he also gets hit by the iron that April uses to knock the pins out of the hinges. She also uses that to hit his wrist. So he's, ow! Like every single time Hiram's on screen, something horrible is about to happen to him, and he totally deserves it.
He also, logistical question. I gotta interrupt you real quick.
Sure.
Now, I think it was Eric's turn to pick a movie. We then chose something that Jonathan wanted to watch, which technically could be Eric's pick because
I said last time
he said it was okay.
That's fine.
Yeah. Do we want to stick to that? And then who's got next?
I don't even remember what my pick was. So
I think I still have it on my Netflix queue. So
was it VHS Viral or was that Aya's?
No, that was my next pick. That was my next pick. But Aya's gets to go before me, so I was just like, yeah, when it comes to my pick again, we'll watch VHS Viral.
Okay, so then I'm gonna use this time to find something while you guys amuse yourselves.
Yeah, I'm trying to see. I'm trying to see what it was on my list. Why don't they list the list? Why don't they include the lists in the order that you added them to your list? Because this is not the order I've added them.
Oh, you mean by suggestions?
Did you see?
Well, no, I mean I'm actually, because I thought I added what Eric had picked on my list, but it's not right at either end, so it's somewhere in the middle.
It was 200,000 Dirty. It was the Coolio movie.
Oh, yeah, right.
That was you.
You watched the Atari documentary, Jonathan?
Yeah, Game Over. I watched that.
Yeah, I watched it last night.
It was all right. I I think they were giving E.T. way too much slack at the end. I mean, I agree that it's not the worst Atari game ever made. It's definitely not the worst video game ever made. And it's not even the worst Atari 2600 game. But they started going, they're like, it's actually a really good game. No, it is not a really good game.
No, it was not. It was interesting, however, hearing from the developer about like his point of view, because I hadn't heard that part before. So
yeah, that was great. And also seeing his reaction at the dig, that was really interesting.
Yeah, no, like, totally.
He became overcome with emotion because, you know, he knows like that whole thing legitimately set his career back decades.
Yeah.
You know, he took years to try and find a new niche after that after the bottom fell out of the home video game market. And that part is very, I mean, the idea that his life was very unfair just because he had made this game and it got associated with the video game crash. I also agree that E.T. did not cause the video game crash. It was an indicator of some of the big problems that led to the video game crash. But the fact that he was so closely associated with that was unfortunate.
It made me sad that I didn't actually drive down there, because I was going to when they were doing the dig. And then I was like, what if, I don't know, maybe they're not going to find anything.
You did, however, get to miss the dust storm.
I did miss a dust storm in Alamogordo, which, by the way, like I've been to Alamogordo, and it's great because White Sands is nearby, so you can play around there. That's pretty cool. There's nothing else in Alamogordo. Nothing. I ate at a Chinese restaurant there. It was all right. Not great. I think that's literally my experience of Alamogordo. There's an IMAX down there.
Now we need a new segment on this podcast, and we'll just call it Eric's Yelp Corner. We'll just have Eric review small towns in the Southwest.
You know what? I've been to a lot of them.
So it could be a really good. You know, we could really mine that for a lot of material. The other documentary I
could drive to them because there's tons of them around.
No. The other documentary I watched was one that Ayaz should watch, which is Sheik. It's about the Iron Sheik.
Yeah, I saw that too. That actually looks interesting.
It is interesting. I met the Iron Sheik, and I met him. The documentary follows him from the point where he was an amateur wrestler in Iran to the point where he moved to America and became a professional wrestler, and all the things that befell him afterward as well, about how he's the reason why Hulkamania got the launch it did, because he's the guy who held the championship that Hulk took the championship from, and that's what really launched Hulkamania. And even Hulk credits him, which is saying something. I mean, that's pretty big. But there's a whole very hard to watch section where they talk about his various addictions, because he had a lot of them. And when I met him, that it was still in that era. It was when he was doing tiny little appearances for like next to nothing. And the improv theater I talk about all the time, Dad's Garage, they were doing an improvised wrestling show, and they had Iron Sheik show up to one of the episodes, and he even put the bad guy in the camel clutch. And it was really entertaining, but also kind of sad, because that was during a very rough time of his life. However, the documentary has a happy ending, especially if you find the Iron Sheik saying that he will fuck you in the ass really funny.
Okay, on that note, I do have to pick a movie. So I've got it down to 3. And since I sometimes give you guys options, I might as well do it now. Why not?
Okay.
Since you are talking about wrestling, there is a movie starring Steven Seagal and Steve Austin. Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah.
Not any other Austin. It's called Maximum Conviction.
I thought you were talking about the other one.
It's Maximum Conviction. It's an action movie based on my interest in Tactical Force and Universal Soldier Day of Reckoning, which this could suck. I'm really kind of hoping it would suck. For Podcast Without Pretense, in my terrible profile, it says it would be about 4 stars. So there's that.
What a weird plot. Okay, here's the synopsis for the plot, and I just don't know what world this would happen. Sent to mothball an old prison, a former Black Ops operative and his partner have their hands full when mercenaries arrive seeking 2 female inmates. What?
Yeah,
That's the plot.
Okay.
Alternatively is Joe, starring Nick Cage. Assuming you guys haven't seen that one either.
Oh Jesus.
When ex-con Joe hires 15-year-old Gary to help clear trees for a lumber company, he doesn't expect to become a father figure for the abused son. Now, before you laugh at this, okay, this is a long-ass movie. It's 117 minutes. Like on Rotten Tomatoes and I think Metacritic, it's like
150, an hour and 57 minutes total. So you are the one who complains all the time,
I know.
about when I pick long-ass movies. And you weren't able to watch an hour and 37 movie for tonight's episode.
I know, which is why I was thinking of the third option, which is more of an Eric kind of pick. Just got to find it again. Where is this ridiculous movie that I wanted to... Oh, Thunder and the House of Magic. It's 85 minutes. It's about abandoned cat. An abandoned cat looking for shelter finds a mystical house owned by an old magician and inhabited by an array of wondrous automatons and gizmos. It's a CG children's movie. And... these are our options here. So I'm going to say Joe, no go on Joe, because there's no fucking way I can. You're right.
You made Eric so happy he phased out of time. And we can't get Eric's vote because the quality of his feed has dropped so dramatically. I mean, he looks like Slender Man right now.
All right, so it's either maximum.
Oh, there he is. There he is. Hi, Eric. How you doing?
Am I back?
Yeah,
yes, you're back. So Eric, what do you think?
I Thunder in the House of Magic just looks ridiculous. I don't even.
And also, since I'm so bad at time management, there's no question I can watch this at work.
So, my vote has to go to Maximum Conviction only because Joe, assuming that was still on the on the table anyway, it predicts I would give it 4.1 stars, which is way too high. Although, to be fair, we did just watch a movie that I legitimately love.
I mean, Joe has an 86% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, it's like supposed to be a really good movie. So maybe, watching a good movie would be fun. But, I mean, Thunder in the House of Magic.
Well, and Thunder in the House of Magic, it predicts that I will have a 4-star reaction to. In both cases, it's saying that I would rank the movies higher than the average. Whereas with Maximum Conviction... it gives me the best guess is 1.7 stars.
What do I have?
Which is why
I have 4 stars on Thunder in the House of Magic too. I think Maximum is also the least for me as well.
Yeah, Maximum Conviction for me is 4 stars for Podcast Without Pretense, and it's 2 stars for Thunder in the House of Magic. So clearly, Thunder in the House of Magic is actually a decent movie compared to Maximum Conviction. But since we do like to rag on movies.
I'm going Maximum Conviction. That's my vote.
I honestly am going to vote for Maximum too at this point. Like that.
You should really ultimately decide though. If you really want to watch Thundercat or whatever the fuck it is, then do it, dude. I mean, my opinion is that don't let us commandeer your choice.
I appreciate that, and I think what I'm going to do is I am going to hold off Thunder in the House of Magic only because I've had to watch a lot of children's movies and television shows with my son the past week. Which, by the way, Peabody and Sherman, awesome movie, even for adults. So Maximum Conviction it is. Steve Austin, Steven Seagal, nonsensical plot. Next week, 97 minutes from 2012.
By the way,
it's gonna be, and not next week, next time, because we're not gonna be on next week.
It won't be next week. Yeah, I do love that Netflix has the recommend to a friend feature because now I know what to do to the people I don't like is just recommend all the movies we've watched from Podcast Without Pretense to them.
But you have to add Facebook to that. I don't want to do that so bad. Like Netflix and Hulu, they're just like add Facebook, and I'm like, no, I don't want to do that.
Fine, that's why we have this show. We can just tell them to watch
crappy movies I watched.
I'm gonna have to do something with all these notes. I save these notes in Evernote. I have the last couple of movies. I've got way too many notes. I might have to share it in like a Google Drive that's public or something. So if you guys want to look at that. And where are we on our archives, Mr. Sandine?
Nowhere.
Nowhere. So
You want a
that
straight
means
answer? Nowhere.
2 weeks off and nothing has happened.
that means somewhere at some time at gfqnetwork.com you'll be able to see or have access to our archives or link from there to our archives to listen to the first movie that started this whole ridiculous thing, which was Rock and Roll Frankenstein. When I saw Elvis in this movie, I was like, oh, that could be like a spin-off, right? Like Elvis's head.
I think
But,
technically
no.
the first movie we watched was Troll 2. Rock
That
and Roll
might be.
Frankenstein was like the
Yeah.
second or third movie we watched, and then it really it was good to set the bar so low so early because that's our measuring stick now. So
I still think we should revisit it in a meetup of epic proportions at some point.
I'll do it.
Yeah.
You know what I'll do?
Terrible
I
idea.
can do it. I'll work on it tomorrow. My girlfriend's going out of town. So, you know.
Wait, which thing? You're gonna work on like getting the print
The
of
archives.
Rock and Roll Frankenstein? Okay.
No, I'm
What
not.
is this?
I don't know that there are any states where it's legal to project it.
Well, it's not even available on Netflix. You can watch I, Frankenstein, which I've watched, not very good. There's Frankenstein from 2004 and Frankenstein's Army. So to find it, it's going to be very difficult. Oh, yeah, so we do the show on GFQ Network, by the way. If you're like, hey, where do I get old episodes? I really want to hear these old episodes. You can hear up till, I think, episode 80-something. I have no idea what episode we're up to now. I'll say 82 because we don't do the show.
100-something.
Yeah, it's after
100
100.
something. That's crazy.
We're
We've
on
been
like
doing this shit.
115.
Because we talked about
150.
it at episode 150. That's when we were going to do the reviewing. And at first I protested.
Oh,
then I
geez, that's
remembered
coming
that
up
we
fast.
not that fast, not at the speed that
faster
we
than I
record.
thought.
Anyway, we do the show live on Wednesdays at 8:30 Eastern. That's when we do it, when we actually do it. If you're like, hey, when the hell did you do the show? Because you guys don't show up on Wednesdays, you bastards. Check out,
8:30
we have a
PM.
Twitter. Yes, 8:30 p.m. We have a Twitter account at PWP Show. Usually we write stuff there sometimes. So
Yeah. Sometimes I do it accidentally, forgetting that I have selected that in TweetDeck and it wasn't for my own personal account.
yes, you'll see something brilliant and then it'll disappear in 10 seconds. That would be Jonathan's thing. Hey, let's look at next time on Podcast Without Pretense.
You know, I know I shit all over the synopsis for the movie, but it turns out it totally makes sense.
You know, Stone Cold was so Stone Cold in the movie. It brought a tear in my eye.
Honestly, I didn't see the talking cat coming. I mean, we shot down the other film, but what the hell?